In this video, I'm going to start a series of videos where I examine the Trump cabinet, the cabinet members, Trump himself, using the Aditya Zodiac. And in this first video, I want to introduce what the Aditya Zodiac is. Okay? So, in the oldest books from India, like the Srimad Bhagavatam, we don't have mentions of Aries, Taurus, Gemini, and so on. Instead, what we have is, we have mention of the 12 Adityas, which are the 12 sun gods. Okay? Now, Aditya doesn't mean sun gods, though. Okay? But every Aditya is considered an aspect of the sun. And as the sun moves through the sky from our point of view of Earth, as it's moving through the heavens, every 30 days, every what's called a solar month, or Sora Masa, every solar month, a different Aditya rules that period of time, and that placement of the sun, and that part of space. Okay? Now what Aditya literally means, it means of Aditi. Okay, now who's Aditi? Aditi means the undivided. So you can think of Aditi as this circle. So we have this circle of what they call zodiac signs, but in the Srimad Bhagavatam era, they didn't call those zodiac signs. They called that circle a group of 12 Adityas, which are of Aditi, which means they're of the circle, because the solar months and the sun gods that correspond to those solar months are of this circle. So essentially this circle is Aditi. It means unbroken, undivided, essentially whole. So it's this whole circle. This is Aditi. Now what the Rig Veda has to say about Aditi is Aditi is heaven, Aditi is the firmament, Aditi is mother, father, and son. Aditi is all the gods. Aditi is the 5 classes of men. Aditi is generation and birth. So basically, everything is Aditi. You can look at her as the divine mother aspect of God that correlates to everything. Okay? And how I see it as an astrologer is this circle that we call the circle of the zodiac, and which in this series of videos is going to be the circle of the Adityas, which are the 12 children of Aditi. Okay? And I need to explain what this is so you understand what we're going to talk about when we use the symbols of these Adityas to interpret Trump's chart and his cabinet members' charts and some other charts that bear on all that stuff that everyone's so worried about. Okay? So before I get going, I want to say a couple things. One thing is that this first video is going to be somewhat astronomical. It's going to be largely astronomical. It might be a little confusing as a result for some people. You don't have to learn this, memorize it. Just sit back, enjoy it. What soaks in, soaks in. You don't need to know all the astronomy, but by just sitting back and enjoying, having fun, you'll get the picture of what I'm talking about. In the subsequent videos when I'm looking at charts, then you'll learn cool things about the Aditya, and most importantly, you'll see them in use, okay? And get a flavor and feel for them. The other thing I want to say is I'm not a political motivated person in any way. I've never voted in my entire life. I'm not concerned about who wins an election. I've never been unhappy or upset over any electional win. Every once in a while I get bored and I have some time, so I'll try to predict an election. But it's not a big part of my life. So I don't want anyone to get the idea that, oh, I'm really into politics, that's why I'm doing this. No, I'm really into astrology. And since, this whole thing with Trump winning again has a lot of people on their toes for very different reasons, I wanted to just thought, hey, this would be a fun topic to reveal and show you how the Adityas work. Okay? And so my motivation for doing this is it's a current topic, but I'm here to show you how the Adityas work. I'm not a Shastra-minded person. I'm not into governing how people rule their lives or deciding what's right for people, what's wrong for people, or even what zodiac they should use. All I do is I'm a Brahmin-minded person. I observe, I try to understand, and then I share what I've understood with whoever cares to listen, and whether they like it or not, I'm not attached to it. no, any more than I'm attached to who wins the next election or who won this election. All right, so I want to make that clear. So now we're going to go on to explain this fascinating aspect of astrology, which is really the lost lore of the true oldest Vedic astrology. You know, a lot of people say, oh, it's Vedic astrology, Rig Veda. You know, no. There is no Aries, Taurus, Gemini in the Rig Veda. There's only gods. And these gods are all forces of nature in some way. And many of these gods are these Aditya beings. They're mentioned. Arima, Mitra, Varuna, Indra. These are beings that are mentioned throughout the Rig Veda. Now, all 12 of these Adityas, I don't think find mention in the Rig Veda, but at least 8 of them do. Okay? Now, so if we say Vedic astrology, no, there is no Aries, Taurus, Gemini in the Vedas. It's just not in any of them. Some of the Vedas have something called the Yavana Jataka attached, which is a manual on how to calculate the time and the seasons and the lunar months and that kind of stuff. It does it all with nakshatras. It does not do it with Aries, Taurus, and Gemini the way we do it now. And that's that particular appendage to the Vedas. I think it comes with the Samaveda, the ones the priests use. Or maybe it comes with the Yajur Veda. It comes with one of those. It's kind of attached to some of them and considered, an auxiliary, so you can figure out the right dates to do the things that these books tell you to do, the rituals and so on. But that little text is, Vedanga Jyotish, as it's called, is from around 900, maybe at oldest 1100 BC, where the Vedas, especially the Rig Veda, dates at least to 3000 BC. It's much, much older. And so there really is no clear astrology in the Rig Veda. They talk about seasons, they talk about months, they talk about sun gods. Okay? Essentially, they're talking about the Adityas, as you're going to see, which is all about the seasons and the months and the sun gods. Then in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is considered the most important of the Puranas, which are the mythological books of India that talk about the histories of the kings and a lot of things that happened, like the birth of Krishna and the Pandus and Lord Rama and these different avatars of Vishnu. Some of these Puranas give a list of the 12 Adityas. And each Aditya does not travel alone. So the Aditya is cruising in his sun chariot every month through a different part of the sky. And he travels with different beings. He has a Rishi with him. He has a Gandharva with him. He has an Apsara with him. He has a Rakshasa with him. He has a Yaksha with him. And he has a Naga with him. It's like, what are those things? Those are strange words. Yes, they are. We'll refer to them as we continue these videos. Now, of those two, the one we'll be focusing on in the videos are the Adityas, which is the sun god itself, the children of Aditi, and we will be focusing on the Rishi. Okay, those are the ones I find the most utilitarian as I use these Adityas. The other 5 beings that travel with each Aditya are the ones you've never heard about. Yaksha, what's that? Well, it's a nature spirit. Okay, Naga, what's that? Well, that's a snake. Okay, a serpent being. Then there's a Rakshasa. Well, we've heard of those. Those are the bad guys. They equate to the Titans in Greek mythology, and the giants in Norse mythology are basically the Asuras in those mythologies. Okay, or the Asuras or the Rakshasas, as they're also called. Okay, so all those beings have a role to play in what any part of the sky has to deliver. So when we use this symbology, we're getting 7 components, 7 symbols to analyze each of your planets with, to look at your chart that we don't have when we look at Aries, Taurus, and Gemini and ignore the Adityas. In the Srimad Bhagavatam and other Puranas, they give, 12 sutras where they give the Aditya, the solar month it's related to, and the beings that travel with the Aditya, And then the Srimad Bhagavatam is really, really great because it tells you where in the procession each being is. So for instance, the Rakshasa is pushing the chariot from behind. Well, that's a very important, significant symbol, okay? That's his role in the procession of the sun god through the sky in his chariot, okay? So each of these beings has a role to play, which is a symbol of, okay, what's it doing in our lives, in our psyches, in our consciousness, okay? And this is really most likely the oldest form of astrological symbolism from India and perhaps even in the world, okay? The Srimad Bhagavatam, it's hard to date that, but again, that's the closest it comes to any type of zodiac. Now, I call this the Aditya Zodiac, but it's really not a zodiac because zodiac comes from zoo, like zoology, animals, creatures that live on Earth. So the zodiac is a circle of creatures that live on Earth, including Gemini, who's a human sign, Virgo, Libra, and Aquarius, which all are symbolized by humans, which are also creatures dwelling on Earth. Now the Adityas, it's really not right to call it the Aditya Zodiac because the Adityas are the sun gods that live in the heavens. So we can call it the Godiac, but that sounds cheesy. So I just call it the Aditya Zodiac, but it's not truly a zodiac in accordance with zoology, animals, creatures that live on Earth, okay? It has to do with the sun gods. It's the circle of the Adityas. And this idea of the circle is very, very important because we all know what the symbol of a circle is, right? The circle is a symbol of love and universal connection. It's the whole. It's the hardest shape to draw perfectly, you know? It's the most perfect whole is the circle. And that's Aditi, the circle. And essentially this is a circle of love. And each of these Adityas is actually an aspect of love. Each of you has a particular Aditya that's strongest in you. That's the type of love that you're most capable of giving. Or if those planets in that Aditya are in really bad shape, that's the form of love you're twisting out of shape more than anything else. Okay? So Aditi gives the perfect love, the circle. Each Aditya gives an aspect of that perfect love. Okay? So each of us has the capacity for some aspect of love. Nobody can give a perfect love of all the Adityas because there's simply not enough planets that we could even have a planet in every Aditya. You know, there's 7 planets that have consciousness attached to them, Sun through Saturn. 7 planets that we can channel love through, essentially. So at most, a person can give 7 flavors of love, okay? In our lives, all we have to do is give a healthy dose of that flavor of love that's strongest in us, and if we do that, our life's going to work. If we fail in that, our life does not work. Okay? It's love that gives connection. It's connection that makes life work. Okay? And that comes from our particular Aditya. And this is what makes each person unique, is the element, the aspect of love that we're able to give. Now, lots of times people expect another person to give an aspect of love that they don't have, that's not them. And that's very selfish of the other person to expect that. We're each only responsible for giving the aspect of love that is our Aditya. Okay? That we have to give. We're humans. We're not Diti or Aditi. Sorry, we can't give the full circle of all love, you know? We only can give the love that we have. Every Aditya can give one of the 12 flavors of love. Okay? As humans, there's one we're going to be most capable of giving, but we can give several flavors. But if so, they'll be more diluted. Where if everything's more focused in one really robust flavor, it's going to be, in lots of ways, more powerful than lots of diluted flavors of love. So, it's not how much love, how many flavors of love you can give. It's the purity of the love that you can give that matters. So when we look at an Aditya, we can see, oh, what's the strong Aditya? What's the flavor of love that's trying to flow through them? And how pure is it flowing through them? We study that by judging at the avashtas of the planets that are opening the gate to that current of Aditya love. Okay, so the Adityas are the love, essentially, that we're capable of living our lives with and expressing into this world. That's what's going to make our lives work. Okay? Then we have the Rishi, which I'm going to work with a lot too. Rishis are the lawgivers. They sit and their job is to chant the hymns where they tell you the truth of, this is true, this is how it works. And every Rishi has a different law. Like one Rishi, Vishwamitra, he's the law of thieves, of stealing. Wow, there's a law of stealing. Okay? Then another one, Twashta, is the paternal law, the law of the father, you know? So there's these different laws that the Rishis follow. And so when we grow up in this world and we live in this world, we're under some kind of law that we're being raised under and grown up under, and we embrace that law in a certain way. Okay? And that's a guiding force in our life. It's a law of something. Those two things together very much guide us along our life's path. Okay? The love we have to give and the law that we're ingrained to follow. We have to follow that law healthily and not skew the law to serve our egocentric, wounded ego purpose. A lot of people twist the law. A lot of people have taken religious books and twisted them to conform to their needs. We can do the same thing with the law of the Rishi. Or we can follow the law truthfully with the spirit of love. Okay? So those are two aspects of the Aditya symbology that we'll be using very heavily. Okay, so now a little bit more into the astronomy. Okay, in this chart here I have the circle of the 12-fold division of the sun gods, the Adityas. Okay? And this circle is cut into quarters by the vernal equinox, which turns into the autumnal equinox, and the winter solstice, which as we go north, turns into the summer solstice. So we have these four what we call cardinal points. These are tropical points, which means they have to do with the motion of the sun to the earth. So, when the sun's up here, the amount of light in the southern hemisphere and the northern hemisphere is balanced. Okay? That's why it's called the equinox, as in equal. Day and night are equal when the sun is on the equinox. In that one moment, day and night are exactly the same. Now, when we go down here to the autumnal or equinox, okay, also day and light are equal in the southern and northern horizons or hemispheres. It's also an equinox. And this is actually east and this is west. But we're putting this where on a map you'd have north, and this where on a map you'd have south, because this is the equinox. What is the equinox? It's where it's equal. It's when you take the scales and you balance the scale, right? So this equinox is the balance. Over here we have more of this. Over here we have more of this. It's the balance of day and night, of light and darkness. So imagine this as a big scale with a space over here to put stuff on and a space over here. And this equinox is where the scale is balanced. And what are we measuring? Sunlight. We're measuring where sunlight falls on Earth. When the sun is at the equinox, it's equal sunlight in the northern and southern hemispheres. When the sun is over here at the solstice, it's the most unequal. It's the most unbalanced. Imagine this is a fulcrum. Now the most weight is the furthest from the balance point. So it's really pushing hard. So this means when the sun's over on this half, we have more light in the north and more darkness in the southern hemisphere as a result. And this is the fulcrum. This is where, when the summer solstice hits, where there's the most light up north, the days are longest in the north, the sun is hottest in the north, and in the south, it's the coldest and the least amount of daylight and the darkest, okay? Then the sun comes along and it's equal again.
Then when the sun's over here on the winter solstice, which is around December 21st, okay, the northern hemisphere is getting the least light, and the southern hemisphere is getting the most. And the northern hemisphere is getting the most darkness. So this is when the scale of light is mostly balanced towards the southern hemisphere. That's essentially what we're looking at with these Adityas. We're looking at where is the balance of light and darkness. That's essentially what they are. So every Aditya has a certain luminance, okay, depending on that mix of light and darkness, okay? All right, now, what this means is that the Adityas are a solstice and equinoctial, what we call a tropical division of the circle. They have nothing to do with the stars. They only have to do with one star, Surya, our sun, which gives the light to our life, and which nourishes and energizes the world, the planet that we live in, evolve in, and grow in. With the Aditya Zodiac, we are not concerned about stars at all. You do not see any stars when the Aditya is up there in the sky, do you? You only see stars when the Aditya goes to sleep for the night and it's dark, okay? So, it's a tropical division. The pranas, the way they tell the Adityas, first there's something called solar months, okay? So the first solar month is Madhu, the second is Madhava, the third is Shukra, the fourth is Suchi. So there's these 12 solar months. And these were popular names of the months in older days. Now at some point, the lunar calendar gained such dominance, they stopped referring to the months as solar months. And they started using the lunar month name. Now the lunar month has value, it's important, but the solar month also has value and it's also of critical importance. Okay? Now the problem with this is that the lunar months became so popular and the solar months so forgotten that most people in India for I don't know how long, but today and certainly for a very long time before today, don't even know these solar months. So if you say to someone, oh yeah, you're born in the month of Shukra, they're like, what? Or if you say, oh, you were born in the month of Sahas, they're like, huh? Or I'll meet you on the 10th day of Sahas. And they're like, huh? I mean, it's not used anymore. As a result, when translators translate the Sanskrit into Hindi or the Sanskrit into English or any other language, most of the time they change the name of the solar month and give the approximate lunar month. And that's incorrect. It's solar month. But if you read it in English or some language, even Hindi, they might give the lunar month that sort of equates to it. Now the lunar months and solar months don't line up perfectly. At sometimes they roughly equate, but they're not the same thing. But because people understand the approximate time of the year when a lunar month happens, they can relate to that, so the translators wrote that. Okay? But if you read the Sanskrit, so if you go back and you go look at these sutras, I forgot to look up the sutras in the Srimad Bhagavatam that talks about this. I will pin that below. I'll write it down. It's sutras so and so that explain the Adityas, okay? That those sutras, if you read the Sanskrit, use the solar months. Now the solar months are related to the seasons. With 2 solar months for every season. They have 6 seasons in India. They have the Vasant, which is the brilliant season of spring, where all the bright colors are all over. There's the Grishma, which is the hot season. There's the Varsha, which is the rainy season, the wet season. There's the Sarat, which is the mature season, the season where all the crops and fruits are maturing. We have the Hemanta, which is the frosty season. And we have the Sisira, which is the cold season. All right? And each season has 2 months that have a solar name that relates to each other. So for instance, Madhu means sweet month. You get the sweet flower smell, okay? Madhava means of the sweet, which can mean following the sweet, has the same essence as the sweet, okay? Shukra means brilliant, and Suchi means bright. Pretty much means the same thing, okay? Nabha means bursting forth, like the rain is bursting forth. And Nabhasya means of the bursting forth. So it's all the mist and the moisture that's a result of the bursting forth of the rain. Isha means sappy, Urja means sap. So each of these months, Sahas, oh gosh, what does Sahas mean? Also, I'm getting a mental blank on that. Tapas means hot, Tapasya means heat. Okay? Now, this happens during the cold month because what you need is something hot. You know, you got to make sure you have enough firewood to get through those 2 months. Oh gosh, I'm getting a mental blank on Sahas and Sahasya, but they're related. So each season has solar months that are related to each other because they're following the same season. And the solar month and the season refers to the quality of nature that's happening in the northern hemisphere. It's not really relevant to astrology. What's relevant is that they use the month to say what aditya is present in every month because months are based on solstices and equinoxes. Weather is based, seasons are based on the solstices and equinoxes, how much light you're getting in your hemisphere. But these months don't give any astrological information. They're just to give a reference to when these adityas are present. Okay? It's the adityas that give the astrological symbology, the astrological information. So no, you don't have to turn the adityas around if you're in the southern hemisphere. You use the same. The aditya is the certain way it is because it represents a certain part of our chakras where the entered light is greater or less. So for instance, as I said, this is actually east. This is, this over here is west, okay? But we're putting it differently on the map. Now as the sun moves from east to the north. This is the summer solstice, the sun is at the furthest north, right? This is the winter solstice where the sun is further south. So up here during Varuna and Indra adityas, the sun is furthest north and it's the brightest in the north and the darkest in the south, in the southern hemisphere. And that blend of lots of darkness on the northern hemisphere, lots of brightness, a lot of sunlight on the northern hemisphere, and not a lot of sunlight in the southern hemisphere, creates these energies we call Varuna and Indra. And when the sun's over here, in Bhagya and Pusha Aditya, the southern hemisphere is the brightest and the northern is the darkest. And that blend of light creates the Bhagya and Pusha Adityas. The energy and the symbology of that come out of that proportion of light. So essentially, and this relates to the chakras, okay? Varuna and Indra relate to your third eye chakras. Varuna is your third eye, and Indra is your medulla, which is the reflection of which you see in your third eye. That's where the energy is coming into your system, the life force. And you see the reflection of that as your third eye. Bhagya and Pusha are your root chakra. Okay? Mitra and Vivishwan are your throat chakra. Aryama and Twashta are your heart chakra. Datta and Vishnu are your navel chakra. Then Parjanya and Amshu are your sexual chakra. And as I said, Bhagya and Pusha are your root chakra. So when we're really looking at these adityas, we're seeing the sunlight We're seeing the position of the planets and the sun in your chakras. We're seeing the proportion of sunlight that's hitting your chakras, essentially. Okay? How much sunlight you're getting in your upper chakras and how much sunlight you're getting in your lower chakras. Because this line of the equinox is your midline between your 3 lower chakras and your 3 upper chakras. Okay? So as the planets are moving through the Adityas, they're energizing your chakras differently according to this scheme. And that's why astrology works. That's why the Adityas work. So the Earth is the body of your chakras. With the south, where the sun crosses the southern solstice or the winter solstice, that is the I was going to say that's these 2 Adityas. Okay, that's when it's darkest here, and when the sun comes here, it's crossing your midline, and when the sun's here, there's more energy available in our 3rd eye chakra, and when it crosses here, it's crossing the midline again. Okay, so the energy is moving through our chakras every year with the sun and the other planets. Okay, and we have our sun and planets creating a fixed energy in our chakras that we're fixed on. Essentially, that energy is stuck. It's fixed. It's not, we're operating with that energy all the time. And then the motions of the planets are the energy we're operating with on a day-to-day changeable basis. That's not as fixed, not as focused, okay, because it's not fixed. Okay, a couple things about the Adityas. The first Aditya is Datta. He's also called Datri. I usually call him Datri because he's more familiar to me in that, but Datri, Datta are the same. The 12th Aditya is Parjanya. Now, some of the Puranas give a different view on what Aditya rules is connected to what month. Okay? I use the system from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Not that I blindly think the Srimad Bhagavatam is going to be correct and others wrong, because what happens is books become corrupt. You know, things get misplaced, books get wet, people make mistakes as they rewrite them down or wrote them down from oral tradition. So we always have to be suspect of anything we read, and we have to compare and try to figure it out. After doing that comparison, I felt that the arrangement of the Adityas to the months was correct. I liked the results of what I found in the Srimad Bhagavatam more than I found in the Puranas that say something different. Okay? The biggest difference is that Vishnu is usually not given in other books, not in some other books, is not the 8th Aditya, he's rather the 12th Aditya. And then they make some changes over here that I don't even recollect what they are. But this is them. Now, this idea of the Adityas is something I've been using for a while now, quite intensely. I've been using it more and more over the last 3 years in my work. It's something I've been wanting to develop for a very, very long time. It's just for years, actually. In fact, I actually started playing with this and developing this idea 18 years ago. Okay, this idea of the Adityas, but it's been a very slow, long-term project. 18 years ago, we had an eclipse during that in 2007, beginning of 2007, and that's when I stopped using the sidereal zodiac. I had already sort of stopped 2 years before. I was researching for 2 years the tropical and sidereal. Beginning of 2007, there was an eclipse, and during that eclipse, I decided to the research just showed me that tropical is working better in every case, and I couldn't use sidereal anymore. So during that eclipse, I let everyone know that I have to do tropical or quit astrology, essentially. Okay. Now it's 18 years later. Eclipses come in 18-year cycles, where the eclipse that's happening this year is the same as the eclipse 18 years ago. It's the same one. And this year, during that eclipse, I will be starting a full formal class on the Adityas, a lengthy class on my website, astrologyvideos.com. Right now I'm just showing you all the power of it and how we can use it in this series of videos. But what's interesting, I've been wanting to do this, and finally I got to the point where last year I was like, great, I'm going to be able to start this next year. Then I found out that the eclipse from 18 years ago is repeating itself, and it actually falls on my birthday this year, exactly on my sun. The sun is the Adityas. So I'm really laughing how I kind of introduced this idea of tropical zodiac to the Western Vedic astrology world in, because of that last eclipse. And here I am now, starting to gear up for introducing the Aditya, circle of the Adityas, because of this eclipse. So this eclipse has something to do in my life with zodiacs, or with divisions of the ecliptic. So we're really going to get into this, and this is going to be my major point of focus during this year. Okay, starting with this series of videos. After I get done with these videos, I will start the official class, which will be a couple months away. It'll probably happen right about when that eclipse is hitting me. Okay? Okay, I don't want to in this video really get into a lot of the symbology of what these signs are. And I hope this gives you a taste for what we're going to do. And the thing I want to emphasize, I really feel this is the original Hindu zodiac. Okay? I'm not going to say it's the original zodiac from India. I'm saying it's the original Hindu zodiac. Because all these Adityas, all these deities, all these beings that travel with Adityas are found in Hindu mythology. Okay? Who knows what other mythologies have come and gone from India before that or since that, It's not like Hinduism was the only thing ever found in India, and even today it's not the only thing found in India. But I think it's the original Hindu symbology for the zodiac. It's a tropical division, but it's not the same as tropical zodiac. In the tropical zodiac, the first sign of the zodiac is Aries, and it starts when the sun hits the vernal equinox on March 21st. Okay? The Aditya zodiac does not start when the sun hits the vernal equinox. It starts the month before the sun hits the vernal equinox. So the first month is before the vernal equinox. The second month is after the vernal equinox. And both these Adityas have a relationship to each other because they're both sharing this equinoctial point. Okay? And so the first Aditya is not the first sign of tropical Aries. It's different. It happens 30 degrees before that. So even though we're using a tropical division, number one tropical zodiac is not number one Aditya. In fact, number one Aditya is actually tropical zodiac sign number 12. Okay? But we don't care. We're going to forget about animals. We're going to get out of the zoo. We're going up to the heavens, and we're going to hang out with the sun gods for a while and see what they can offer us in symbology. Okay? Now, what's really interesting, the way the Hindus calculate the Lunar New Year is they take the last sun-moon conjunction before the moon crosses the vernal equinox. That's the correct way of calculating the Hindu Lunar New Year. Unfortunately, these days, they calculate the Lunar New Year when the last sun-moon conjunction before the sun enters sidereal Aries. It's not supposed to be sidereal Aries. It's supposed to be tropical Aries. It's supposed to be before the sun hits the vernal equinox. The sun-moon conjunction, that last sun-moon conjunction before the vernal equinox. Okay? That's the way they calculate out the Lunar New Years. And the Sankranti, what they call, in India they have something called Makara Sankranti, which is the Capricorn ingress of the sun. And that's a big, big, serious event. It's one of the biggest religious celebrations. It's critical because that's when the sun starts moving north. Now, when the sun hits the winter solstice on December 21st, At that point, the sun starts moving north, and every day you get more sun in the northern hemisphere. So this makes the people in the northern hemisphere, such as India, happy. That's why we have Christmas. It's also a Sankranti celebration, okay? But it got turned into the birth of Christ because the pagans wouldn't stop worshiping it, and the Christians had an issue with that, so they had to find a Christian reason to celebrate the winter solstice ending. Now, Christmas takes place about 3 days after the solstice, because you're not supposed to do anything important for 3 days after the solstice. And so Christmas is a celebration of, let's go do the great things again, okay, in the pagan traditions. 3 days after the solstice. Now, when the sun starts moving north, it's more auspicious for spiritual activities. That's why Bhishma in the Srimad Bhagavatam, even though he was full of arrows, he had the right to only die when he wanted to. Even though he was in pain, full of holes, he wanted to hang around until the sun crossed the winter solstice and started moving north, because it's more auspicious to leave your body during that time. Okay? There's certain events that it's more auspicious to do when the sun's moving north. Okay? Like teaching something new, like the Adityas. I'm doing it after the sun started moving north. I could have done it a month or two ago, but the sun was moving south. I didn't want to do that. I want to eliminate the Adityas, not bring more darkness to them. Okay? This is the uplifting motion of the sun. This is the descending motion of the sun. So, this solstice was really, really important. The Hindus, the modern Hindus, around 600 BC, rediscovered precession, which they had forgotten about until about that point. At that point, they started calculating the solstice based on the sun's motion into Capricorn, but they used sidereal Capricorn. So these days in India, they celebrate the sun starting to move north, what they call the Makar Sankranti, on January 14th. But the sun has already been moving north for 3 weeks by then. Okay? In the same way, they also commit the error of starting the Lunar New Year before the sun enters sidereal Aries, when you're supposed to start the Hindu Lunar New Year, before the sun crosses, when the sun-moon conjunction, the last sun-moon conjunction is before the vernal equinox, which is tropical Aries. Well, we don't care that it's tropical Aries. What we care about is that it's the last sun-moon conjunction before the vernal equinox. Okay? And the Hindus of the Surya Siddhanta start the year at the vernal equinox. The Aditya Zodiac, or the circle of the Adityas, does not start at the vernal equinox, as I mentioned. It started a month before the vernal equinox. Okay? So the sun and moon conjunction the month before the vernal equinox, is the start of the Aditya Lunar New Year. And that is the same as the start of the Chinese Lunar New Year, which is no surprise because India and China share history, right? They're all Buddhists up there. Buddhism came from northern part of India. Buddhism is a guru, a Hindu guru that became more successful north than he was in the south. Okay? So what I actually do is I actually calculate the Lunar New Year based on before the sun enters the month before the vernal equinox. And I started doing that because I made some blunders. I made some predictions that didn't come true. Using the lunar, the solstice, so the equinox Lunar New Year. And then I tried the Chinese Lunar New Year because I was studying the Adityas, and I knew that, the Aditya year starts a month before. It starts on the first day of spring, which is 30 days before the equinox. I checked charts and I found my mistake, and it totally made sense. Since that year, I've made the only predictions I really regularly make on that. I like to make real estate predictions, like say, what's happening with the real estate market? And I've been correct every year since then. I make it to myself, a few friends who are looking for houses, and real estate agents that bother me who don't want to who want to hear something else, and I say, no, it's definitely not going to go the way you want to, because you get these greedy real estate investors that are just waiting to pounce and make money, and they try to get houses from people so cheap. I bump into those people sometime, and I'm so happy to tell them my predictions that it's not going to go the way they want to. So, and they're not going to get their little greedy fingers on all that money without working, okay? So, and I found it to work really, really well. So, it's not the tropical zodiac in the sense that Aries equals the first Aditya. It's a whole separate thing. There's simply 12 sun gods, 12 Adityas, with the first one being the 30 months before the vernal equinox, and the second one being the 30 degrees after the vernal equinox. Okay? So, now that I've explained what this is astronomically, given an idea of what we're working with, I will start diving into some charts, and then you'll see the symbology in action. Okay, thank you.